Ajay Pangarkar is standing by. So, Ajay, I asked you to come on because I want to talk a little bit about some of these statistics that are coming out of the federal workforce. We're seeing sick days just explode from around an average of around 6 during the height of the pandemic to over 9 a year now. A few years later, so what do you think? How do you explain this?
Well, I'm hoping the federal government will give us some statistics behind this, but what I'm sharing with you more assumptions. First, if you look at the pre-pandemic numbers, this is probably closer to the pre-pandemic numbers, where I believe the government was around 8 or 9 or 10 sick days prior to the pandemic. Now, that sort of makes sense because if you think about it, right, at the pandemic, you're isolated at home, and of course, we were all isolated at home, so we weren't interacting with others, so we weren't interacting with contagions, right? So we weren't getting as sick as much. And so our risk was reduced significantly. And so that made sense during the pandemic. But post-pandemic now, of course, we're commuting, right? We're getting on public transit. We're interacting with our coworkers, and our kids having calls every day at school, and you're bringing that pathogen into the workforce. So it makes sense that it's spiking. That's one assumption I will share with you, but there could be another assumption. As you're aware, Matt, the government is trying to look at bringing people back to work into the office. And so there could be an assumption that some people are trying to capitalize on maximizing their sick days to stay home from work. And so that's probably another possibility where it's spiking it. But again, I'll just share this, Matt. These are just assumptions, but I'm assuming the first one is probably more reliable than the second one.
All right. Speaking with workforce performance strategist Ajay Pangarkar about these new numbers, about the increase in these sick days. So you were saying, just very quickly, I want to go back, because you were saying that before the pandemic, it was around 8 or so per year. So what is like an average if we take the pandemic out? What would you say an average number of sick days for a worker is in a typical year?
That's pretty much reasonable. People, work a legitimate and a reputable company will give an allocation of a certain number of sick days, right? And so, it's reasonable that people take that, and it's anywhere between 5 and 10 sick days. Probably the normal range of that. It can go a little higher, sometimes a little bit. But, part of that is also, if you're not taking your sick days, you may want to take some of those sick days because you lose them, right? So, legitimately, it's for illnesses. But as we all know, we're all human. If we're not taking our sick days and we are going to lose them at the end of the year, we might as well take a few extra days here and there, especially around the summer or as we go back to school now. People are getting a little stressed, and they might need a little break along the way. And so they might take a day here and there just to relax. So, but the average is between 5 and 10 usually overall. But that's usually the normal case. But yeah, pre-pandemic, naturally, the 8 to 10 is probably a normal range. And so going to 9 right now, it might be on a little high side, but I wouldn't say that's unusual, considering that, listen, you and I have friends that have kids, right? So
I have kids.
I talk to my friends and go, well, we're sick again. Like, why? Well, the kids brought something home from daycare,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
it's not unusual in that sense. So I don't want people to maybe overread into this. So that's one thing I just want to.
You said something there that made me think. I wonder if, from a business's point of view, if it's a better idea to give unlimited sick days so that people don't have this idea, well, I'm going to lose these paid sick days if I don't take them. Is there any research into whether the psychology of whether people take sick days when they're not sick, when the sick days are unlimited?
Not that I've seen, to be honest with you, Matt. I haven't seen many studies on that. In general, it does make sense if you do that, to be honest with you. And I believe people are good-natured at heart, and they're honest, and they want to do their work and so forth, and they want to report, and do what they need to do at work properly. So I don't think people are taking advantage of this for any reason. I will say this, though. The unlimited sick days might be troublesome in a world where we're struggling between people wanting to not return to the office and companies wanting people to return to the office. So in that context, we might have a little struggle now that if you have unlimited sick days, people might take advantage of that, just for the sake that, they don't want to commute for 2 hours, a day or 3 hours a day into public transit or whatever in the traffic to go to work, to sit in a cubicle to do work they know they can do at home. So and I always say to companies, look, think of it differently, rather than start struggling about whether they're working at home or not. Why don't you base their performance, like measure their actual performance at work, and that way, whether they're at home or in the office, you bring them into the office for a reason, like a valid reason, and that will sort of alleviate these marking up, maximizing the sick days and this kind of stuff that go unchecked sometimes.
The fact that we were seeing fewer sick days during the pandemic when everyone was working at home
Yeah.
compared to now when people are starting to go back to the office, is that in some ways an argument for work from home?
A little bit. I mean, to be honest with you, Matt, I've always said this, especially when I talk to different of your colleagues at CJD. I'm a proponent of work at home. In this day and age, we're a little more should be more progressive in that thinking, and that we should be looking at. Listen, I used to go to an office where I'd sit before a cubicle and work on Excel or Word or whatever all day, and maybe interact with a few people and have some meetings. But the general, most of my work was sitting before an Excel spreadsheet. And it's like, well, why am I traveling an hour to get here and stress and try an hour go back home when I could then at home and spend that extra hours? And we did see an increase in productivity during that time too. So to me, it's like if you're a smart company and you're listening to this, I encourage you to bring people in when it's for like a team engagement or innovation capacity or something to that effect where you need people to engage together. But if they're just going to stare at a computer screen all day and they can be more productive and more healthier being at home, then you will reduce, maybe sick days and this kind of stuff if they're working like that. Listen, it's hard to close the door when you're at home and you're doing work and you have to get things done, right? So that's another advantage. Most people don't take advantage of that.
Mm.
They take that myth away about people saying they want to slack off sitting at home. I don't think that's a reality.
All right. Ajay Pangarkar, thanks very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Matt. Have a great Labor Day, and everyone.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much.